WGS solves a 10-year outbreak. Earlier this year, food safety investigators made a startling announcement. They had solved a Listeria outbreak which had been going for 10 years. 10 years! The first illnesses were reported in 2014 and the most recent in December 2023. During that period, at least 23 people, including 2 newborns, were hospitalised with listeriosis. 1 baby was lost to miscarriage and 2 people died. But until February 2024, no one knew exactly where the illnesses had originated. In this post, we'll learn how an outbreak can last for 10 years and why it was suddenly able to be solved. The secret to the investigation's ultimate success lies with a relatively new technology called whole genome sequencing, WGS. WGS determines the detailed genetic identity of an organism, revealing the order and number of nucleotides, that's adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine, in the organism's DNA being deoxyribonucleic acid. This gives a complete and detailed picture of its genetic makeup, including gene structure, function, and variation. WGS also allows investigators to discover links between patients whose illnesses are separated by distance and time. In food safety incident investigation, it's a game changer. Rather than simply saying Listeria made that patient sick, epidemiologists can now determine how closely related the illness-causing strain is to Listeria samples from other patients. WGS also allows investigators to positively match samples from a factory environment and food samples to pathogens isolated from sick people. Using it to provide evidence of a genetic match between environmental samples, food samples, and patients is like finding a smoking gun in a murder investigation. WGS is not new, but was not extensively used in food investigations or surveillance until recently because it was prohibitively expensive. The cost of performing whole genome sequencing has plummeted in the past 2 decades thanks to advances in sequencing technology, going from millions of dollars to less than $1,000 per sample. With the cost reduced, public health professionals can now use WGS data to understand the relatedness of strains of a pathogen and make links between microorganisms from different samples, which is crucial for tracking the sources and spread of foodborne outbreaks. The 10-year outbreak was previously thought to be a collection of small and unconnected outbreaks until WGS was performed on patient samples, which had been kept in storage, revealing the Listeria involved in each outbreak was genetically similar. 3/4 of the patients reported eating queso fresco, tortilla, or similar styles of white cheese, and 3 people remembered eating Don Francisco brand soft white cheese. In January 2024, food safety officials in Hawaii discovered Listeria in cheese during routine sampling. The Listeria was a genetic match to the organisms in the patients. The contaminated cheese came from the same factory that produces Don Francisco cheese. Following this discovery, investigators went looking for evidence of Listeria at the factory, where they discovered a smoking gun. An organism with a genetic match to the bacteria in the patient samples was found in containers used to store the cheeses between production and packing. More than 60 products and 13 brands of cheese from the factory were subsequently recalled because every product went through the contaminated containers. Every time a new product was going through those containers, it was being contaminated, explained Associate Professor Duttweiler of Northeastern University. While it seems perhaps miraculous that more people weren't sickened by the contaminated containers, that probably comes down to the nature of listeriosis. It's a foodborne illness that causes only mild symptoms or no symptoms in healthy adults. Only vulnerable people, including the elderly, infants, fetuses, pregnant mothers, and the immunocompromised, experience severe effects from listeriosis. In addition, for every person who's reported as having a foodborne illness in the United States, there is an estimated 22 who aren't reported by their doctors and dozens more who don't seek medical attention. The 10-year outbreak is now officially over, solved by investigators using WGS and PulseNet, the US system which stores and compares samples from foodborne, waterborne, and zoonotic illnesses. Without those technologies, the source of this outbreak would not have been discovered, and the contaminated containers could still be in use, posing a risk to vulnerable consumers to this day. Takeaways for food professionals. Contamination events from poor food handling practices, such as inadequate sanitising of work in progress containers or WIP containers, are now more likely to be traced back to the at-fault facility. With the smoking gun of WGS, there is no longer anywhere to hide for businesses that don't prioritise food safety. And as always, I've got a link to the sources I used when preparing this email and post for you. And if you'd like to learn more about Listeria and how they survive in biofilms, you can check out issue 97. And I've also included a not very fun fact, which is that Listeria can take up to 70 days, that's more than 2 months, to cause symptoms.